Hi there, Facebook land and LinkedIn land and YouTube world. I'm Michelle.
I'm Jim.
We're from A Teak of Your Own. Welcome to another Motivational Monday.
Let's get motivated. Woo!
Woo! Yeah, it's a special edition of Motivational Monday because today
It's the 4th of July.
it's Independence Day. That is correct. It's the 4th of July everywhere else.
That's true.
Here in the United States of America, it's Independence Day.
Okay, but most people say 4th of July. So,
Yeah, well, no, it's Independence Day. And what are we celebrating today?
Our independence
From
Britain.
Yes. And for those of you who may not remember American history, because there are some people who don't, there's actually a lot of people who don't.
Yeah.
On this day back in 1776, you had a group of very, very brave colonists who signed a document saying, we're not part of the United Kingdom anymore. We're not part of England anymore. And the reason why I say that they were extremely brave is because as soon as they signed that document, there was basically a bounty on their head.
Yes.
Okay. If you haven't read the Declaration of Independence ever or recently, you should. Not that hard. It's actually one-page document. Now, they're not teaching cursive anymore.
No, so some of the kids can't read it.
It's going to get harder and harder for some people to read it. However, what you're going to find is this is what our country was based on. These are the values that our country has. And this is what not only the country, but I would go as far to say that various organizations and different businesses and different leaders, this is what the basis of all that is here in the United States. Would you agree?
I think I'm trying to comprehend your statement.
Okay, so the reason why I say that is because when it comes to the Declaration of Independence, this is something that lays out the reason why our country needed to break away from England.
Yes.
But it also talks about what our country stands for.
Yes.
And what our country values. And I think the same can be said about leaders in our country and organizations within our country, that they have similar values and similar reasoning behind why they are who they are.
Some of them do, yes.
Okay. Now you have over there, you've got a smaller.
Yeah, this is the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. And as you can see, it's not that long.
It's not that.
So it's
not massive.
It's not massive. So it's something that I recommend that everybody in Congress maybe pick up a copy and read at some point, because some of you have never read it and it's obvious. I'd say everybody else that's in, especially federal government, pick up a copy and read it sometime, because it's obvious some of you haven't.
Well, I would also say, we've got election coming up in November, and if you're going to vote, read this.
Yes.
Read this first.
Yes, before you go to vote, because, you might change your mind.
And what you're going to find, this particular, we got back in Colonial Williamsburg. We got this from the Colonial Williamsburg Foundation, and it has the Declaration of Independence in here, and then it's got the Constitution. And then it also has a foreword that explains the circumstances that these were written under.
Right.
So it'll give you a little bit of history of the history of our country and why it's so important. So what does this have to do with leaders, and what does this have to do with business? Well, prior to the Declaration of Independence, this country was all, the 13 colonies were all subjects of England. They were subject to the taxes that England had. However, one of the reasons why we chose to break away is because we had no representation when it came to deciding what was taxed and what wasn't.
Right.
And business operated very differently back then. And it was hard to have interstate commerce. It was hard to have global commerce because of the bureaucracy and because of the taxation and the tax structure that was put into place. And there was a reason for that, because England wanted, their piece of every single little piece of pie.
Out of every corner of their empire.
Yes. And so for them, it made sense to slow down trade because they needed to be able to get as much out of it as the businesses were.
Yeah, so they could wage their endless wars.
Yes.
Yeah.
And well, back then they had one of the biggest armies and
Right.
navies in the world.
Right.
And
the way things worked is you went to war with somebody, and when you beat them, then
you got stuff.
You extracted reparations
Yes.
from them.
You got stuff. You got land. You got resources.
Yes. And then it gave that other side an incentive to fight back at some point.
To the victor goes the spoils.
Yeah, well.
And for way back then, back in the 18th century, the spoils was literally you had to take over another country.
Right.
You could take over other people's land, and people would go from being a subject of one king to the subject of another, and that's the way it worked back then.
Thank goodness after World War II, we finally figured out that was a dumb system.
Yeah, World War I was the last.
Last one.
When they call it the Great War, and the war to end all wars, no. But it was the last one where you saw the distribution of various parcels of land and resources to individual countries.
Yes, from the loser.
Yeah. So it didn't work out too well.
Yeah, it didn't work out well at all.
No. So Declaration of Independence, the people who signed this, the men who signed this document, that took some bravery right there. And the reason why I say that is because literally as soon as they signed this, and you can see on here, you've got several signatures on there. You had people from all of the colonies who signed this. As soon as they signed this, as soon as this was read in public, England knew who these people were.
Yeah.
And literally their lives were in danger.
Right. If we would have lost, that was a death sentence for them.
Was.
Yeah, they knew it.
And so they had faith in our country. They had faith in this theory, because back then it was a theory. It wasn't in practice yet of what our country could be.
Right. Nobody had ever done it before.
No. And so they had faith in it. And when you look at some of the people who signed this document, you've got some very famous people in history. You've got Sam Adams and John Adams from Massachusetts, but you've got other people from, like I said, all over. And they went on to do so much more. These were the original leaders of our country. And so when it comes to leadership, they set the standards back then. How would you describe some of these leaders?
Well, as exactly that, true leaders. They put everything on the line, and they were willing to go forward first. And that really set them apart, unlike, some of the leaders that we have now who blame everything on somebody else.
Yeah.
These folks, they put it on the line and they accepted responsibility for it. So they knew what was going to happen. Which is maybe the fatal flaw of the thinking of the time, that perhaps if the king had said that if they were to cease and desist,
Mhm.
that they would receive leniency, but that wasn't going to happen. And
No.
so it's that almost that idea of once they signed the document, they had, they burned the ships.
Yep.
They were in it. And so that gave them every incentive to win.
Yes.
Besides just, their freedom, it was also their lives.
Mhm.
But the fact that they were willing to put it all on the line, and knowing that the odds were long,
Mhm.
that they were going up against the most powerful
Mhm.
military in the world at the time, and they were just a bunch of ragtag farmers.
Yeah.
And they succeeded. I was watching a documentary the other night about Francis Marion,
Mhm.
and and it's and it's just the swamp fox. It was
Right.
amazing that basically that was where guerrilla warfare really came
Yeah.
from, and it was a case of realizing that the old tactics of just trotting your army out and standing and
In open fields.
Yeah,
and shooting at each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's that was a bad idea. Now, they were way outnumbered.
Yeah.
And the British were still using those Napoleonic tactics. And
Well, they weren't Napoleonic tactics back then.
well, that's true.
Napoleon wasn't around yet.
That's true. That's true. But it was those Napoleonic style tactics of just lining up and banging away. And it wasn't going to work. So they came up, he came up with a new way of fighting. And managed to vex the British army, in many different ways.
Yes.
So, and that's what they had to do, is they had to be creative. They
Right.
had to find new ways to fight. And even though, the British would say, well, that's not fair. It's like, well, lining up in front of you and getting blown away is may be fair, but it's also stupid. So
that's also where you go back to the quote, all's fair in love and war.
yes.
And when it comes to showing leadership, these were people who were willing to do anything and everything
Right.
for the good of the people that they were representing. And that's what leadership is all about. Yes, you are right, Richard. Beautiful people and picture appropriate music. Yes, I would love to hear that. But when it comes to the leadership that they showed, one of the most important parts of leadership is putting the people that you are leading ahead of your own needs and of your own what it is you're not doing this for what it is that you gain. You're doing this for what it is that they gain.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what every single person who signed the Declaration of Independence did, is they put the needs of the entire country that they were creating ahead of their own. They did not do this with visions of grandeur.
No.
They did not do this thinking, oh yeah, I'm going to sign this and one day I'm going to be, some great politician who rules the world and rules what all's going on. No. That's not what they did, even though you've got some presidents who are on here. That's not what their thought process was.
Well, they didn't know they were going to be presidents at the time, because they hadn't even created the office of president at the time.
No, that's what the next part of that book is the Constitution. That's where that was created.
Right.
Because after the Declaration of Independence, after we waged war and won against England, you had the Confederative States, and that went nowhere fast.
Right.
Because you had 13 independent little countries that couldn't get along.
Right.
So that's the reason why we have the Constitution. That's the reason why you have a federal government and you still have state governments. And that's the reason why there was this balance between having a not super strong federal government,
Mhm.
but also not having super strong state
Right.
governments.
That's why this Constitution is there to guide what the federal government can and can't do.
Correct.
And well, it's gone way beyond those bounds, unfortunately. But there's a tremendous amount that it does now that is not supposed to do according to the Constitution. And it is not a charter of negative liberties, as somebody that many people would know once said. It is a charter of positive liberties, and it's the liberties of the people,
Yeah.
not the liberties of the government,
No.
as that person was saying.
Yeah. This is definitely the Constitution spells out the rights for the people, for the citizens
Right.
of our country. And that's the other thing, is it doesn't spell out rights for people who aren't citizens.
That is correct. There are no rights for people who are not citizens, according to this,
No.
or at least none specified.
No. And if they aren't specified in the Constitution, you have to kick it down to the states.
That's right.
So that actually is specified.
That
in
is
the
specified. It's
Constitution.
the 10th Amendment.
Yes. That
And it's very clear.
that if the federal government doesn't have something on the books, if they don't have a law, then it goes down to the states.
Right. Goes back to the states.
And when it comes to some of the things that the federal government is currently doing, they kind of overreach.
They don't kind of overreach. They overreach a lot.
So I think what you're going to see over the next few years is a shift in the way that the powers that be are doing things.
It's already started.
Yeah.
And it's that trend, I think, is going to continue and will pick up speed very soon. And it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out.
Today, though, is a perfect day for people to read the Declaration of Independence and to look through the Constitution. In fact, many communities will have a public reading of the Declaration of Independence. I know Hannistown is going to do it at 2:00 this afternoon. So if you're here in Westmoreland County, head on over to Hannistown. The reenactors will actually read the Declaration of Independence.
That'd be a fun experience.
It is.
And then listen to the words.
Yes.
Listen to the words. Because there's so many people, if they would just read this.
Well, and when you listen to the words, one of the things that you have to remember is when the Declaration of Independence was written, when the Constitution was written, every single word had a purpose. They wrote this. And like I said, the Declaration of Independence truly is just one sheet of paper. And they put extreme thought into every single line because they wanted to precisely express their thoughts and ultimately the actions that they were going to take.
Mm-hmm.
They did not use a lot of fluff. They weren't one for going into extreme detail.
Yeah.
They just said, here's the way it's going to be, and that's it. So it doesn't take very long to read this. We've been talking about, managing oneself and how tiny of a book that is.
When you look at this,
once again, tiny book.
Economy of work. I think that every bill that comes out of Congress should not be allowed to be any longer than these documents,
That would be wonderful.
combined documents. Because if they were, then maybe some of these people in Congress that are passing these things would actually read them.
What? You want them to read?
Yeah.
That's just crazy talk.
Yeah.
right
When they trot out 2,500 page
there.
bills and give them, 5 hours to read it before they're going to vote on it.
Yeah, this.
It's no wonder we get some of the things we get.
This is 47 pages long.
Yeah.
All right. So this is once again the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States. Small booklet. You can put it in your pocket if you have a pocket, and it's 47 pages long.
Pass a law that all bills coming out of Congress can be no longer than 47 pages and the number of words that are right there. Then we might actually know what in the world they're voting on and what we're getting.
I don't see that.
It'll never happen.
Yeah, it won't. However, There's always hope.
Yeah.
So on Independence Day, celebrate your independence. Business leaders, businesses, celebrate the independence that you have. Because depending on what country around the world you're in, there are some countries out there that would tell you what type of business you would
Right.
run. There are some countries out there who would look at individuals and say, this is what your occupation is going to be. We don't have that here.
No, you still get to choose what you want to do.
Yes. So,
And so for all you business people out there, celebrate, because in my view, just me, you are the patriotic of the patriotic, because you're out there making this country work.
yes.
And, stated a long time ago that the business of America is business.
Yes.
And that is what we do best. And we celebrate businesses. We work with businesses and companies to help them improve and, get the outcomes that they want. And so we celebrate that businesses and commerce, that is the backbone of this country. It's where it was started all the way back in the beginning with Jamestown. It's the reason they came here was to find prosperity in their fortunes. And that is truly the basis for this country.
Yes. Yes. So
we should be celebrating businesses, not criticizing them.
Yes. So keep that in mind. Pick up a copy of the Declaration of Independence and the U.S. Constitution. Read it.
Yes.
And celebrate the independence that you do have in this country.
Yeah.
All right. So if you want to get in contact with us, you can reach out to us here on LinkedIn or Facebook. You can go to our website, aleagueofyourown.com. Feel free to give us a call, drop us an email, leave us a message. We are more than happy to hear from you.
Yeah.
All right. Next week, we're back to managing oneself.
Okay.
Sound good? All right. Have a great one. Celebrate. And we will see you next week. Facebook land and LinkedIn land and YouTube world.
Happy
Bye,
Independence
everyone.
Day.